Good afternoon. My name is Alan Sousie. I'm Director of Nursing here at TLC Home Care, and welcome to TLC Academy. I want to offer you today some information that I think is pretty important because it relates directly to how we look at ourselves. The topic today is what's so important about self-esteem. In order to understand the importance of self-esteem, we must first know what self-esteem is. Self-esteem refers to a person's beliefs about their own worth and value. It is also having to do with the feelings that we experience that follow from our sense of worthiness or unworthiness, as the case may be. Self-esteem is important because it heavily influences our choices and our decisions. In other words, self-esteem serves a motivational function by making it more or less likely that people will take care of themselves and explore their full potential. People with high self-esteem are usually people who take care of themselves and persistently strive towards fulfillment of personal goals and an aspiration of some kind. People with lower self-esteem don't tend to regard themselves as worthy of happy outcomes or capable of achieving them. And so, they tend to let important things slide, and they tend to be less persistent and less resilient in terms of overcoming any adversity that they face. These people may have the same kinds of goals as people with higher self-esteem, but they are generally less motivated to pursue them to their conclusion. Self-esteem is somewhat an abstract concept. In other words, it's hard for someone who doesn't have it to know what it would be like to have it. One way for a person who has lower self-esteem to begin to appreciate what it would be like to have higher self-esteem is to consider how he or she feels about the things in life that are valuable. For instance, some people really like their car. Because cars are important to them, these people take really good care of their cars. They watch out where they park their car. They watch out how they maintain their car. They often get it serviced, and they watch very carefully how they're driving their car. They may decorate their car on occasion to show it off so that they can be proud about its splendor and show it off to other people. So self-esteem can be similar in value to a car of importance, except it's you that is being loved, cared for, and felt proud of. So my experience has shown that when individuals believe they are valuable and important, they take better care of themselves. By making good decisions and maintaining personal well-being, these individuals enhance their value rather than break it down. Most of us feel bad about ourselves from time to time. Feelings of low self-esteem may be triggered by being treated poorly by another person recently or in the past, or maybe by looking at yourself and judging yourself. This is all normal. This happens to all of us. However, low self-esteem as a constant companion for too many people, especially those who experience depression, anxiety, phobias, psychosis, delusional thinking, or who have an illness or a disability, lends itself to hardship and melancholy. When such mental and emotional conditions exist, one may go through life feeling bad about him or herself needlessly. Usually, low self-esteem will hamper the enjoyment of our life. Doing things you want to do and one's ability to work toward personal goals are also affected negatively. Indeed, we all have the right to feel good about ourselves. However, it is usually very difficult to feel good about yourself when you are under the stress of having symptoms that are hard to manage, or when you are dealing with a disability, or when you are having a difficult time, or when others are treating you badly. That's an awful lot of ors. At these times, it's easy for you to be drawn into a downward spiral of lower and lower self-esteem if you allow it. For instance, the spiral downward may begin with feeling bad about yourself when someone insults you, or when you are under too much pressure at work, or when you are experiencing challenges in relationships, especially relationships with those you love. In these circumstances, you might start talking to yourself in a negative way. For example, you might think to yourself, I'm no good, or I'm a loser, or I'm so stupid, everyone tells me I am. Ever said those things to yourself? These negative emotions and notions could make you feel very bad, so that you might seek an escape or some way to eliminate the mental and emotional suffering they cause. Some typical choices often witnessed are hurting oneself or another person who becomes your scapegoat. You might decide to drown your sorrow with alcohol or to alter your mind with other chemicals. And you may project your pain outward by verbally abusing significant others, friends, or even colleagues. Ultimately, when our self-esteem gets this low, it is vital to our well-being to find ways to lift our self-esteem. Interestingly, when you do strive to lift your self-esteem, you may notice that you feel a sense of resistance to feeling good about yourself. This is normal again. It is best for you to disregard the sense of resistance. Eventually, if you do, you will notice resistance diminishing as you reset your positive esteem. Another way to reduce your resistance to improvement is to share what you are going through with others that you trust. Occasionally, it may be useful to permit yourself to have a good cry. And alternatively, you might try relaxation exercises, or meditation, or prayer, or listening to inspirational music, or songs of other sorts. And finally, but not least, you might even pamper yourself to a warm bath, a visit to a spa, or a nail salon. Whatever you find as ways to alter your self-perception and your sense of resistance, keep in mind this thought: I am very special, I am very unique, and very, very valuable as a person. I deserve to be good to myself. Now, self-esteem is thought of as occurring on a continuum, meaning that it smoothly varies in amount or magnitude from low to high across all different individuals. The differences between people are not obvious, but instead are apparent only through comparison of their thoughts and feelings about self-worth. In other words, we look at each other and we assess what this person might have or might not have based upon what we have or what we don't have, and vice versa. Self-esteem is also thought to vary in its proportionality and its reasonableness. Well, what does that mean? It turns out that not all instances of high self-esteem are the same. Some people with high self-esteem have arrived at the opinion of themselves based on a series of actual accomplishments. They give themselves credit for being able to meet new challenges because they have in fact successfully met previous challenges. Their good opinion of themselves is in proportion to the real challenges that they have overcome in their life. Now, in contrast, there are other people whose high self-esteem seems excessive and out of proportion to their actual accomplishments and actions. These people think well of themselves, but they cannot point to any substantive past accomplishment, action, or choice that they have made which would justify high self-regard if you are a fair-minded observer looking at them. Their higher self-regard is based more on a sense of entitlement than on a sense of accomplishment. This entitled version of high self-esteem is less psychologically healthy than the more proportional variety of self-esteem, mostly because it's plain selfish and self-centered, and is based on a sense of entitlement. This variety of high self-esteem is sometimes described as overly inflated, indicating that it is excessive and out of proportion to actual accomplishments and actions. And in adults, this type of self-esteem is often linked to what? Narcissism.
Yes.
Just as self-esteem can be too high or overly inflated in proportion to a person's accomplishment and actions, it can also be too low or underinflated as well. In many cases, people who end up having poor self-esteem have met adversity and challenges, and nevertheless have treated others well, and do have a basis for feeling good about themselves. But for various reasons, including tendency towards depression, anxiety, or obsessive perfectionism, a habit of engaging in cognitive distortions, or because they have been abused or exploited, people with underinflated self-esteem may not recognize these accomplishments and actions as being meaningful to them. Instead, they see themselves as failing to meet an internalized and unreasonably high standard of goodness, and therefore display very low self-esteem and corresponding emotional distress when they cannot meet their own internal standard. Contrarily, outside observers who often see them as worthy based on their accomplishments and actions, and they have difficulty sometimes understanding exactly why this person feels so badly about himself. Self-esteem is thus more complicated than simple versus high and low. On the contrary, self-esteem varies in terms of its magnitude and in terms of its reasonableness when compared against perceived accomplishments and actions. Anyone seeking to foster healthy self-esteem needs to nurture and cultivate both magnitude and reasonableness as attributes of their life. The methods by which we communicate and we receive communication are very important in terms of fostering our own self-esteem. For example, in a work environment, our communication should be about more than just communicating information or giving directions to someone. It is also vital that we listen carefully to what our colleagues have to say, that we pay close attention to their feelings, that we strike an appropriate balance between how we praise and how we give correction, that we express confidence in the ability of others whenever possible, that we respect privacy and we remain confidential as needed, and that we support the need for individual expression and independent decision-making. Communication of this sort will convey to others that they are valued and therefore valuable, and it will provide recipients with a sense of healthy, balanced boundary. Ultimately, communication of this sort will teach by example, and it reinforces a foundation for healthy self-esteem. In relation to building the foundation for our self-esteem, it is evident that we are all born with the ability to feel and act emotionally. However, this does not mean that we were born with formed opinions about the legitimacy of our feelings. Consequently, in addition to personal examination, we have opportunities in life that influence how we come to view our feelings. We discover whether feelings are good or bad, and even whether we are entitled to have certain feelings in the first place. By paying careful attention to our emotions, and then accepting feedback from others who have carefully listened to us and picked up on our emotions, we may learn that our feelings are legitimate and acceptable. Sometimes others are better able to name an emotion for us when the emotion lies outside of our own awareness. This is referred to as validation. Validation is surprisingly difficult to accomplish when the person to be validated is expressing ideas and feelings that seem trivial or unimportant to the observer. This happens commonly when we communicate with less experienced persons, like children and demented adults. It is important for us not to trivialize the notions and the feelings of others, because for them, momentary experience could be a monumental experience. When we do trivialize their experiences, we will surely alienate them, because the other person will believe we don't get it. We can best avoid communicating to others that their concerns are unimportant or trivial by taking care to give our full attention while talking with them, by making eye contact to convey that our attention is fixed on them, and by making appropriate and heartfelt responses of empathy or sympathy at the appropriate moments. The full range of emotions can be handled in this way, whether it's happiness, excitement, sadness, frustration, or embarrassment. When we give others this high level of attention to their emotions and ideas, we communicate that their feelings are real and that they're important that they are entitled to have those feelings.
Yes.
They are not taken away from that person. Some of us may not innately know the words used to describe different feelings or the connections that exist between specific feelings. But we can learn from others who are willing to validate us. Thus, my closing advice to all of you: learn to validate, and validate at every given opportunity. Your commitment to do so will boost your own self-esteem and that of others, and you will be liked and trusted. And I thank you for your attention today to my presentation.
Thank you, Alan. I found all that you said very interesting. I do have a question. Do you have any suggestions for people to, any reading material or something that you feel might be beneficial for them to bring things into perspective pertaining to their own lives? Like, I find biographies and autobiographies are very helpful in really seeing that you're not the only one feeling this way, and when you research that kind of material, I think it really brings things into perspective often, depending on where we're at in our growing and understanding. Yes? Do you have any other?
I think that's true. You can learn by the statements made by individuals in their biographies or autobiographies that are written about people by others, because you see the ins and outs of a person's life, the ups and downs of a person's life,
Challenges.
and the challenges they're faced with.
Mm-hmm.
There are some self-help materials that are out there in the world at large, which are not expensive and easy to get on Amazon, or even to go to your local library and find.
Mm-hmm.
I've read many self-help books over the course of my career, and some have been better than others. I would urge anyone who really is struggling with self-esteem to perhaps first seek support from a loved one or someone they trust, and have conversation with them about how they're feeling. Because if they can get validation from a real person rather than a written material or a visual content, then they're more likely to be successful at finding a way out of their low self-esteem situation. But in the event they can't, maybe you just haven't got enough time in the day to do that, I would urge you to just do some Googling online if you have computer savvy, and find some information relative to self-esteem and just consume it. That's a good place to begin.
Thank you.